Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, March 21st. It's a little bit after 7:30, and this is the meeting of Lakewood City Council. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Present.
Bullock.
Here.
Litton.
Here.
Marks. Here. Nowling.
Here.
O'Leary.
Here.
O'Malley.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held March 7th, 2016.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And abstentions? That motion passes. I would, without objection, move that we relocate items number 16 and 17 to the top of our agenda for this evening.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 16, communication from Councilmember Litton regarding St. Edward High School 2015 football state championship.
Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, I have the honor to recognize the student athletes of St. Edward High School. On December 5th, the Eagles of St. Edward once again defeated Huber Heights Wayne to earn the distinction of state champions for Division I for the second straight year and the third time since 2010. Any championship of this magnitude is an accomplishment. To do so with such regularity is truly impressive, and no less deserving of our recognition, I might add. The championship game itself, a 45-35 victory, kept this particular council person on the edge of his seat, and particularly the fourth quarter when the team had to overcome some adversity and a late touchdown did seal the victory. The game capped off a 14-1 season, which is also notable given the regular season schedule and playoff schedule that the team faced. So congratulations to the team, coaches, families, and the entire St. Edward community. Job well done, and best of luck to the graduating seniors as they move on to college. And I might add that as a bench warmer of some of the teams of the late 90s, what you gentlemen accomplished is nothing short of a dream to many, and no small accomplishment. So thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
Chair, I move
Yes.
to get Councilmember Litton a tissue, perhaps.
I would second that. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 17, Resolution 885916, a resolution to honor the 2015 St. Edward High School football team for earning the Division I state championship.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman O'Malley.
just wish to echo my congratulations to the team. I've always had a great deal of admiration for all the hard work of student athletes. My uncle was an assistant football coach at St. Ed's for a number of years, and even though I didn't go there, and by the way, you're about to be honored 7-0 by a city council where Wildcats outnumber Eagles 2-1, so it's pretty indicative of how much we really respect all the great work that you've all done. Congratulations.
Thank you. And as the ranger of my council, I'll add my congratulations as well. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. I'd like to take a quick minute to invite our guests from St. Ed's who are with us tonight up to the podium to make a remark if they see fit, and also to join us for a picture and the presentation of the resolution. Thanks.
My name is Coach Tom Lombardo, and I represent these wonderful student athletes. First off, I would thank Councilman Linton, Mayor Summers, the rest of Lakewood Council, and others that invited us here. We truly appreciate being recognized. Most importantly, the recognition of all the student athletes that obviously go to school to attain an education and move forward, and couple that with extracurriculars, whether it be football or any other endeavor. And certainly these kids, they really put a lot into this particular extracurricular activity. So we have representatives from every class. We have freshmen here, Dalen Jernigan. He doesn't have a choice to be here because I'm taking him home tonight. Our punter, sophomore Mason Lawler. My son Tommy, who helped us at the managerial staff. We represent him across the board. Tommy Lombardo here. Junior center Kyle Payne. Senior wide receiver Teddy Gordon. Teddy's on his way to South Carolina. Most likely South Carolina, still deciding. And senior captain and two-year starter at guard, two-time state champ Kyle Tomczak, whose choices of college include MIT, Notre Dame, Virginia, Vanderbilt, Carnegie Mellon. So he's got some tough choices there. But he's top of the class, 4.5 student, wants to go on to some type of engineering that I probably can't even define. So the 2015 Eagles here, hope to work hard again and represent our school and the city well again. Thank you guys for having us. Appreciate it.
What'll get lost in a couple of years.
Don't tell the alumni.
I should have known that standing in the back was not going to work for us.
Yeah, as long as you're not looking at the back of the head. Take a couple more. Thank you.
You guys got to go home and do homework now.
Brings us to agenda item number 1.
Item 1, Committee of the Whole report regarding March 21st, 2016 committee meeting.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole did meet this evening. We discussed a number of items, including an update on proposed ordinance 1-16, which is the non-discrimination ordinance. We look forward to addressing that very soon in Committee of the Whole, hopefully with members of the community present, as well as an opportunity for folks to understand more about that ordinance and that topic. We discussed proposed ordinance 2-16, which is the sign code. Had another brush with that topic and are going to take a second or additional pass at it again in the future. Proposed resolution 8856-16 was discussed as well. Director Siley shared with us a number of the specifics related to that property and the process that it's in. The conclusion being that we hope to get underway with the abatement and demolition of what's been a long-standing nuisance to the community. We had an update and discussion regarding council technology upgrades and improvements to the auditorium, particularly the audio and visual aspects of the auditorium, but many of you in the audience will be appreciative to know, I'm sure, that that discussion, thanks to Councilmember O'Malley and others, also included mention of the seat level, the seat comfort level for members of the audience and the administration. We're going to be buying new chairs. That's the takeaway there. We also had a discussion of our civil service appointment, as well as an agenda review, which we skipped. So that will conclude the committee of the whole report for this evening. I would move that that oral report be received and filed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that oral report? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing that oral report, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 884016, a resolution appointing blank to a position on the Civil Service Commission for the term beginning January 1, 2016 and ending December 31st, 2018.
Move to substitute the name Kenneth Kowalski into the blank in Resolution 8840-16.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. We will need a roll call vote.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Nowlin?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
That motion passes. Move to adopt Resolution 8840-16 as substituted.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Nowlin?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
That motion passes. Item number 3.
Item 3, Ordinance 216, an ordinance to amend various sections within Chapter 1329, Signs of the Codified Ordinances.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? I would just add that, as I noted, we had some discussion of that tonight. Planning Commission has had a discussion on that topic as well and recommended adoption. I think that we do have a few more topics related that we wanted to touch on, but hopefully we'll be taking some action on that ordinance in the near future. All those in favor of deferring, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That's deferred.
Item 4, Resolution 885616, a resolution to enter into agreement for the provision of asbestos abatement and demolition services related to the Hilliard Theater in an amount not to exceed $1 million.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 5, Public Works Committee report regarding Ordinance 1816 and Tree Task Force recommendations.
Councilmember Nowin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear members of council, the Public Works Committee met Monday, March 14th. Councilmember Bullock and myself were present, as were Public Works Director Benno, Assistant Law Director Swallow, City Arborist Chris Perry, and 2 members of the former Tree Task Force. The committee discussed Ordinance 1816, which proposes to clarify that cyclists are permitted to ride in the bus lane on Clifton Boulevard. Most area communities with bus lanes permit cyclists to use them, and so this was the assumption at the time the Clifton bus lane was constructed. RTA is supportive of the measure. The committee agreed that Ordinance 1816 would promote enhanced safety for cyclists and recommended adoption by full council. The committee also discussed Resolution 885216, which proposes to memorialize the recommendations put forward by the Tree Task Force in 2014. The committee contemplated the most appropriate way to preserve and highlight the work of the Tree Task Force while at the same time allowing the Division of Forestry the flexibility to evolve its practices. The city's arborist, Chris Perry, discussed the principles and plans that guide the Division of Forestry in its everyday work. It was agreed that the city currently has very robust forestry practices, but the council has an interest in ensuring that this remains the case in the future. The committee will continue this discussion at a further meeting. Move to receive and file its written report.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to receive and file that report? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 6, Ordinance 1816, and ordinance amending Section 33108, driving in marked lanes or continuous lines of traffic, to prevent bicyclists to operate bicycles in bus lanes during restricted hours.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 7, Public Safety Committee report regarding ordinance 416.
Move to defer. Is it correct, Councilman O'Malley?
Yes.
Okay. Move to defer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? My understanding is that the committee meeting for which this report was contemplated was postponed. Is that correct, Councilman?
Well, we had the committee meeting, and I can report on that, but it was the ordinance itself, we had recommended adoption, but we had talked also about talking with the Animal Safety and Welfare Advisory Board, whose meeting was canceled this week. And so before we vote on this, I would just like, in the interest of due diligence, to reach out to them. So.
That's great. Thank you for that clarification. I believe we have a motion and a second to defer. Further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 8, ordinance 416, an ordinance amending the code to provide for the impounding and disposition of certain animals and establish related charges.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 9, ordinance 1916, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into equipment leases in forms approved by the Director of Law on behalf of the city. Please substitute.
Move to substitute.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to substitute. Any discussion on the substitution? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Nowlin?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
That motion passes. Move to adopt as substituted. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Nowlin?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 10, ordinance 2016, an ordinance authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on this motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman
I'll
Bullock.
simply remind my colleagues that the Finance Committee already recommended adoption of these two ordinances, the one we just adopted and the one we're considering now, and we held until the third reading, which is for tonight. So, and both of these ordinances were routine in nature. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification as well. I believe we have a motion to adopt and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 11, ordinance 2116, an ordinance to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances and resolutions as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances and to provide for the publication of such new matter.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Council members and the public may recall, this was also a relatively routine item that comes up on a quarterly basis. And council had a couple opportunities to raise any questions or concerns particular to this quarter's version. Hearing no additional discussion on this, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 12, ordinance 2216, an ordinance to enter into an agreement with a licensed real estate broker to market for sale the real property located at 1252 Westlake Avenue, vacant lot associated with 1589 Newman Avenue, 1589 Newman Avenue, 1635 Hopkins Avenue, and 1214 Gladys Avenue for a period of 120 days pursuant to section 15507 of the codified ordinances.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Councilmember O'Leary regarding appointing Brian Taubman to the Animal Safety and Welfare Advisory Board.
Thank you. Members of the public and council colleagues, it gives me great pleasure tonight to announce the appointment of Brian Taubman to the Animal Safety and Welfare Advisory Board. Brian has demonstrated his commitment to service and the citizens of Lakewood. I am sure that he will serve us well in this new role. Move that communication be received and filed.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 14, communication from Councilmember Marks regarding amending section 505.18, keeping of hens.
Councilman Marks.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, please find attached an ordinance that amends 505.18 of our code to provide for the keeping of hens in the city under certain conditions. Because discussions have begun on this subject already in the Housing Committee, I ask this item be referred to that committee. Will we receive and file and submit to Housing?
Second, motion has been made to receive and file that communication and refer it to housing. Is there additional discussion? We do have public comment, which I will call at this time. April Stoltz.
Okay, April Stoltz, 1224 Edwards Avenue. I just want to say how excited I am that we finally, after I think maybe 4 years, have arrived at the point where we are, you, council, looking at changing the city ordinance for the ability for people to actually have, responsible backyard hen raising here in Lakewood. So I'm very excited about the fact that we're doing this tonight. Just want to share with you, probably many of you already know, but the pilot's been a really big success. We have 11 families. It's been a year now, and we are just very excited about how well it's gone. Some of you attended our coop tour in September, another huge success. Some of our families had more than 100 people show up in a 2-hour period, not all of them from Lakewood, but to actually see what keeping a micro flock, small number of birds, in our yards, it works and what it looks like. To be able to see what this looks like for real. Now we have a year's worth of real, on the ground, hands-on best practices with 11 Lakewood families. So I'm hoping that we had one housing meeting. David Anderson was very kind to let everybody who showed up, we had a number of pilot families be there to speak to the ordinance, what they'd like to maybe see shifted and changed, what they've really appreciated. So we're looking forward to working with you in the Housing Committee and for those families to be there to share their experience and their best practices. And just urge you to move swiftly on it so that we can vote this in before the pilot ends in July. So thank you so much for the support, for introducing it tonight, for the opportunity to let people grow and raise their own food responsibly in the city. I think we've proven we can do it, and thank you for seeing that and moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We have one other person signed up to speak on this agenda item. That's Jan Dragala.
Yes.
Hi everybody, I'm Jan Dragala, 1571 Roycroft. I'm one of the pilot families, speaking for the other pilot families tonight. And I just want to thank you for allowing this process to happen. It's been exciting, it's been wonderful. The tour was, people came an hour early to my house and stayed an hour late, and I didn't stop talking for all that time. There was a lot of interest, a lot of positive response for that. The best part, I think, besides loving my hens and the food that they provide for me, which was especially good as I watched egg prices climb over to the $5 a dozen, $6 a dozen, and I just go in my backyard now. So I've been able to provide my neighbors with a lot of good food over the year too. My neighbors have been wonderful, they love it, and I've got more neighbors that I've known than ever before, and I've lived in Lakewood since 1983. People stop, they want to see the hens, the kids want to come over, they want to feed the hens, and I've taught them all how to do that. There's one elderly couple especially that walks in my neighborhood, and they like to come back and see the hens, and so I first time they came by, I offered them chairs because they're quite old. And the gentleman was so excited that he sat down on the ground and the hens climbed on his laps and he just laughed and was so happy. So there was like story after story of stuff like that. So that increase in neighborliness, I think, was one thing that was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. So that was just a really great thing. And so many people don't know about how to raise animals or grow their own food anymore. And personally, I think that's a pretty important thing to know how to do, especially in this day and age. And since I've been doing this, I have so many people that want to buy eggs for me. Now, I know we can't do that in our situation, but it just indicates to me how much of a need there is for people wanting to raise their own food and having, healthy food and being able to have some control over it themselves. So thanks again for the opportunity. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Look forward to working with you and tweaking some of the stuff. And it's just great. I hope more people can get hens. So thank you.
Thank you. So that's the end of our public comment for that agenda item. I believe we have a motion to receive and file the communication and refer to housing. Any additional discussion from council? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 15, ordinance 2316, an ordinance amending section 50518, certain animals prohibited of the codified ordinances of the city in order to permit the keeping of hens in the city under certain conditions.
Move to refer to housing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilman
Just
Anderson.
wanted to make a public service announcement that we do have a housing committee scheduled for next Monday at 6 to start to discuss not only this ordinance, but the report we received from Animal Control regarding sort of their inspection process over the last few years and some insight into their process from the inspection and administrative point of view. So look forward to having that hearing next Monday night. Thank you.
Thank you. So, March 28th at 6, Housing Committee on Henkeeping. Without anything further, all those in favor of the motion to refer ordinance 23-16 to housing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 18, communication from Councilmember Nowlin regarding appointment to Citizens Advisory Committee.
Councilmember Nowlin.
Dear members of council, this letter serves to notify you of my reappointment of William Barman to the Citizens Advisory Committee for another one-year term commencing on January 1, 2016. I thank Mr. Barman for his past service and for his willingness to continue serving on this board. Move to receive and file.
Second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 19, communication from Councilmember O'Malley regarding resolution opposing the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement.
Councilman O'Malley.
Members of council, for too long, international trade agreements like NAFTA and CAFTA have been negotiated in secret with little or no concern for the impact they'll have on our local communities like Lakewood. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is the latest such attempt at dismantling our trade laws at the expense of American workers. As usual, grand promises of economic growth are being made by advocates of this disastrous new trade agreement. But we have learned the hard way that these promises will ring hollow, having seen hundreds of thousands of Ohio's working families displaced as a result of NAFTA, CAFTA, and other bad trade deals over the last 2 decades. A recent study by the American Enterprise Institute estimated Ohio lost over 112,000 jobs last year due to trade with countries that are part of the TPP. This terrible agreement is a death knell for our already fragile manufacturing sector, which employs thousands of Lakewood residents. As elected leaders of this community, we must speak out. Please join me in urging our representatives in Congress to oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Sincerely, yours truly.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to receive and file the communication?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman O'Malley.
I don't plan to make it a habit of having council weigh in on international trade agreements. However, this was something that, particularly since our particular member of Congress has been the national leader on this issue, and given, and I was too narrow in my letter, communications workers, for example, who aren't necessarily a part of the manufacturing sector, will be particularly impacted given the larger telecom companies are planning to relocate consequence-free if this were to pass. And so I just felt that it was going to have a pretty dramatic impact on residents of our community. Wanted to bring this up. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we have a motion to receive and file. Councilmember O'Malley's communication. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 20, Resolution 886016, a resolution opposing the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement.
So we could certainly refer this to a committee if that were the desire of council. We have not had previous discussions on this resolution. However, I would move this evening to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to adopt. I would just, for my part, echo Councilman O'Malley's sentiments and communication. This is a very important issue for a number of our constituents, as well as all of us. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Anderson.
And I certainly appreciate the council member from Ward 1 bringing this to our attention. You know, honestly, I know that we're talking about voting to support a resolution. I'm not asking for this to be held up, but I just don't know if, I'm pretty sure I haven't dedicated the time that I would need to make a vote on a resolution or anything else the council be considered to do. So, you know, I'm sort of torn. I want to support, you know, the initiative of a colleague, but at the same time, you know, I hate to admit that I just haven't studied up on international trade policy to determine whether or not my vote on it, even a non-binding resolution, is significant or necessary, or whether or not I will just abstain from this vote. And I'm just sort of torn. Any other thoughts on this? You're welcome.
Sure. Speaking for myself, I can appreciate your candor in acknowledging kind of where you are in your deliberation. Any additional discussion from members of council? Councilman O'Malley.
You know, and I'm certainly amenable to deferring this for another meeting if that's necessary. Just in terms of whether this is something, I remember a few years ago, I was very pleased when Councilman Bullock, I believe, I may have my history wrong here, but brought forward a resolution in support of a constitutional amendment about money in politics. Is that right, Tom? Was that a few years ago?
We had,
I'm sorry, I
there
didn't
was
mean
some
to be
citizen,
colloquial.
I think there were
Yeah.
some citizen initiatives.
And I thought that was great. And I thought that, you know, for things that are, you know, larger scale enough and impactful enough that it was, that it's good to do that. And there have certainly been other instances as well where we've had these kinds of things. But I didn't intend to spend a whole lot of time on this, and if it's necessary to defer, I'm amenable to that.
Sure, and we appreciate that willingness. I would be inclined to defer to allow council members additional time, that deferral not being a referral to a committee for additional discussion, but rather just a deferral for additional time to consider it on our own. Would I have a second for the motion to defer Resolution 8861 Resolution 8860-16?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 21, communication from Mayor Summers regarding mayoral commission appointments.
Mayor Summers.
Thank you, President O'Leary. I'm very pleased to announce Peter Ketter has accepted an appointment as director, as a member of the Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board. Peter is actually a long-standing expert in historic preservation. He's studied it, he's practiced it for many years. He is a employee of Sandvik Architects, one of the biggest firms in the region, and specializes in historic preservation. And Peter is very excited about bringing those skills to this particular group. I'm also pleased to announce that Deborah Pareto will also be accepting a term on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Mr. Ketter's term will be 3 years, and Ms. Barretto's term will be 3 years.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 22, communication from Law Director Butler regarding volunteer peace officers dependent fund board.
Law Director Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ordinance that follows this communication creates the Volunteer Peace Officers Dependents Fund Board and, excuse me, that's a resolution, not an ordinance, obligates you to appoint 2 members to that board. This is a new state law, and what it does is it creates a sort of an insurance policy for volunteer police officers, or those acting as peace officers. In Lakewood, we call them auxiliaries. In the event that they are injured or killed in the line of duty. And this is a statewide law that obligates municipalities to appoint a local board to oversee claims and ensure that we are meeting our obligations under the state code. Every year, the city is going to be required to pay a very small sum of money into this state fund overseen by the Department of Commerce. But the first step is creating this local board, and your first step, your obligation is, number one, to recognize the board, which you would do this resolution, and then to appoint 2 members to it, which you would also do with this resolution. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration. I don't think there's an expectation that you would be appointing anyone tonight, so after a committee review, in some committee of your choosing. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? I would just interject that when we get to resolution 886116, the second, I would take Law Director Butler up on his request that we refer to committee for additional discussion. But for the time being, move to receive and file the communication. We have a second. Any additional discussion? None. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 23, Resolution 886116, a resolution creating the Volunteer Peace Officer Dependent Fund Board for the purpose of assisting in the review and determination of validity of claims made under the Volunteer Peace Office Dependent Fund established by ORC Chapter 143 for death or disability of a volunteer peace officer and naming 2 appointees to the board.
Move to refer resolution 886116 to Rules and Ordinances Committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 24, communication from City Engineer Papke regarding council resolution encapsulation of the sanitary sewer line over I-90 just west of Route 237.
Director Beno.
Dear members of council, this is a resolution to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation to encapsulate the sewer pipe that crosses I-90 just west of the Riverside Bridge. The coating is beginning to fall off and is in bad shape. The agreement is for ODOT to cover 100% of the construction cost, which is approximately $400,000. I believe that is their capped limit, and the city is covering the design cost, which has begun on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on receiving and filing that communication?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Anderson.
Thank you for getting this out. I appreciate it. What design costs might there be? Just curious what might be involved in that.
What materials and what products are being used, and specifying that the plans are not very extensive, but it will probably be its own job, so there'll be traffic control plans and everything that go with it as how much of the highway needs to close as the work progresses. It's actually when it said encapsulation, it's actually a wrap that goes around the entire pipe, so you don't have to remove the old coating, you pretty much just keep the coating there. Type of wrap that is used to encapsulate cables on suspension bridges.
Got it. Thank you.
And I do ask that this be referred to Public Works Committee if it could be passed possibly on second read.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So we have a motion to receive and file the communication, I believe, correct? Motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion on that motion to receive and file communication? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 25, Resolution 886216, a resolution to enter into an agreement to accept approximately $400,000 from the Ohio Department of Transportation for the encapsulation of the sanitary sewer line over I-90 just west of 237.
Move to refer to Public Works Committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 26, communication from Human Services Director Giuseppe regarding salary ordinance correction.
Director Yosefi.
Thank you. Dear City Council members, submitting the attached revision to the salary ordinance for your approval due to administrative oversight. The top end of salary grade 38 was not adjusted correctly in 2015. The omission then was exacerbated with the 2016 salary adjustment. The only salary grade affected was grade 38. The top end of grade 38 should be 96,497 and 61 cents. Correction in the salary grade will not have any material effect on the budget or any employee currently in this grade. Respectfully.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication from Director Yosefi.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 27, Ordinance 3215A, an ordinance to amend Ordinance 3215, adopted November 2nd, 2015, to provide for creating positions and rates of pay for the full-time and certain part-time annual salaried employees and hourly rate employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement in the several departments, divisions, and offices for the City of Lakewood, including the Chief of Fire, Chief of Police, and Civil Service Commissioners.
Move to refer to Finance.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to refer? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 28, Communication from Planning and Development Director Siley regarding leasing of space in the Community Health Center.
Director Siley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of council, direct your attention to my correspondence. This is a request to renew the lease of the women's practice that currently resides in the Community Health Center on Bell Avenue. We ask that you refer to the committee of the whole for further discussion. This is similar to the process we recently went through for the geriatric practice, also in that building, and the renewal of that lease. So happy to answer any questions at that committee discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to receive and file? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 29, Resolution 886316, a resolution to enter into a lease agreement with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation for the lease of the real property located at 1450 Bell Avenue, Suite 300, also known as the Community Health Center.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on this topic? Hearing none, we do have a member of the public that signed up to speak on this. That individual is Ed Graham.
Edward Graham, 1286 Chase Avenue. What I would have to say about this is about doing business with the Cleveland Clinic again, and the concerns that we need to have concerning doing business with that particular entity. I look back to February 11, 2015. Council member Marks expressed concerns about the LOI and Cleveland Clinic as a trustworthy partner. She questioned how Lakewood can trust Cleveland Clinic to follow through with the family health center when it denigrated services at the hospital. she raised concerns about LHA not holding Cleveland Clinic accountable. Those were certainly very valid concerns, and she really should have also been concerned about the city officials who should have been holding the Cleveland Clinic accountable as well. One only needs to look at the track record for the Cleveland Clinic in doing business with the city of Lakewood. The vision for tomorrow was supposed to be put into action at the city's hospital. This was supposed to take place as consideration for the city transferring its valuable asset of the business for the two particular services, the trauma center and the pediatrics. The clinic got what they wanted, the city got zero, yet. I think that anytime you're doing business with an entity that has proven itself untrustworthy, the city council should look seriously. There was 10 more years left on the lease that the city would have collected $1 million a year for each year. The city officials chose to give that away and got zip in return. So I think that it's time for our officials to start looking seriously at enforcing our rights. Should this lease be entered into, it may even make sense to do so. However, the question is, if the clinic chooses to terminate that lease prior to term, will the city look to collect its money, or is it just going to say, okay, no harm, no foul, even though there is a lot of harm? So I would ask City Council to take a look at the track record. Thank you.
Thanks. Any additional?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple, in response, Mr. Graham just discussed whether or not the clinic was a trustworthy partner. I think the question before us with this lease is whether they are a creditworthy tenant. And indeed they are. And if the recommendation is that council not approve a lease with an existing tenant that has a long track record and occupies 40% of a commercially viable building, and throw that property in a vacancy, that doesn't seem to be very prudent. There are also distinctions to be made between outpatient services and the inpatient hospital, which has been the subject of much discussion before the council. Finally, I'll point out to the tone and tenor of the comments. The only tool available to the city for achieving a satisfactory outcome is not just the trial courtroom, but there is also such a thing as the negotiating table, and that is in fact the tool that the city has used to pursue its ends, and with significant success, and not to 100% satisfaction of the requests as represented by the Save Lakewood Hospital neighbors, but I think not only we succeeded at achieving what was attainable, but we got a little bit extra too. So when it's implied that we got nothing, I think that's doesn't square with the facts. And in fact, we've been over this many times before. I think that we could remind you of what was accomplished if we're going to anticipate that conversation once again tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Anderson.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to have this referred to committee for further discussion. And as we've already identified, this is a subsequent lease to an original lease. And by those means, council and the administration will be able to judge the performance of the tenants in the previous lease to determine whether or not we want to move forward with this lease. So that's the conversation we're going to have. And that's the conversation we deserve, because again, this is a subsequent lease to an original lease with the city of Lakewood. So I look forward to the conversation.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just would like to correct the record here. Mr. Graham refers to ZIP frequently, but the agreement that you approved, that I signed, provides $24.2 million to the community of Lakewood. It provides $7 million for demo and rehab funds to the city of Lakewood. It provides an additional $2.88 million of lease payments. It provides $8.2 million from proceeds from the sale of Columbia Road. It provides an additional $8 million over 16 years of additional money to the community for the foundation. Now, that's $42.2 million in cash in the near term, plus another $8 million over 16 years. That's $50 million. I have to tell you, in my book, that's not ZIP.
Thank you, Mayor. Any additional discussion on the motion to refer Resolution 8863-16 to Committee of the Whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 30, liquor permit application for D5F and D6 transfers to Cleveland Metro Park, 1500 Cianet Park Drive from Emerald Necklace Marine.
Thank you. As is our custom, I would defer on this item to Councilman Anderson, in whose ward this establishment lies.
Almost exactly. It is a Metro Parks facility, and no reason to object based on the reports received from Lakewood Police Department conversations had. So happy to support this.
Thank you. Move to file without objection.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. That brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening. We have several folks signed up for public comment. The first such individual is Pam McKenna.
My name is Pam McKenna, and I live at 12520 Edgewater Drive. I live in the Marine Towers East. I've lived in Cleveland my entire life, and 4 years ago I came to the city of Lakewood. And let me tell you, Lakewood is a great place to live. It's historic, it's clean, but above all, it's very, very safe. I chose the city of Lakewood because of the first-time homebuyers program. Also, I wanted to get involved in my community, and I wanted a decent place to place my roots. Unfortunately, I reside in the Marine Towers East condominium. The Marine Towers East condominium is governed by a board of managers, elected homeowners, and First Realty Property Management Company. I have lived in this building for 4 years, and I've watched this building slip into a state. It's just unrecognizable. It's unbelievable. The grounds are unkept. The interior of the building is not maintained. The garage is filthy. The dog run is covered with feces and urine. The stairwells are filthy. The elevators consistently break down. We have a generator that does not function on a regular basis. The windows are so deplorable in the lobby, you can't see out the windows. The concrete surrounding the building is absolutely crumbling. The pool is an absolute petri dish of bacteria. Dan O'Malley, councilman, was in the office the day that the lobby ceiling collapsed. Now, I'm not a registered nurse, but I do work in a trauma unit at Metro Health Hospital, and I can tell you that if Mr. O'Malley was 3 feet into that lobby, his injuries would have been critical. Our board of managers and the management company have yet to repair the damages in the lobby. The board of managers and the management company have yet to restore the heat. The board of managers and the management company have done absolutely nothing. I questioned Lee Fallharbor, the president of the condo association, and I said, Mr. Fallharbor, why weren't we given an option of an open vote for a $3.1 million HVAC project? Mr. Fallharbor told me, because my lawyers told me I could do it. This was taped on Channel 5 News. The building was also cited by the building inspector on 10 counts. To this day, nothing has been addressed, absolutely nothing. My question is how long can this board of managers be trusted to complete any kind of a project. The atmosphere in our building, unfortunately, is that of a concentration camp. The owners are disrespected, especially the elderly. My good friend Norman Zuanich confided in me that the secretary withheld a package containing his medication. She withheld the package for 5 days. He went consistently to the office and asked for his medication until she finally surrendered the medication. Norman passed away Thursday, March 17th, of a major heart attack. He went into cardiac arrest and he died. I truly believe that the atmosphere in the Marine Towers East was a leading major factor in his death. I was also given a threatening letter by the property manager because I forgot my shoes outside the door. They took a full color photo of my shoes and they told me, Pam, the next time you leave your shoes in the hallway, you are going to be fined and assessed. I never responded. I believe that there's no coincidences in life. I believe that Norman and I are being harassed. Well, he was being harassed in life. I'm being harassed now because we are part of a lawsuit to hold back the HVAC project. This is why we are receiving this special attention. There's other factors in the building as well. Sleeping at night in my condo is no easy task. The stench of raw sewage emanates from my kitchen sink, preventing sleep. I reported this to the property manager, and yet nothing was ever accomplished. It seems like the board of managers and the property management company have no interest in maintaining the building, yet we are billed, we are assessed. I live in a small studio, and I pay a hefty condo association fee. Now, you know, I'm no mathematician, but I can tell you, I'm wondering where's the money? Is it going into the building? It's not. Is it going into improving the quality, the cleanliness, and the safety of the building? Now, on April 14th, the merry band of managers are going to go toe-to-toe with the Lakewood City Prosecutor's Office. It is my desire that the band of managers, I don't think that they should be given any more continuances. They shouldn't be given any more extensions. I think that they should face the music. Please do not grant this board of managers any more, again, extensions or continuances. It is within my personal opinion. It is within my personal opinion that the direction that this board has taken is absolute criminal.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, we do need you to wrap up your comments.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just say this in closing. If there's any action that the Lakewood City Council can follow at this time, it would be greatly appreciated. And again, the city of Lakewood is a great place to live, and I believe that this council cares about the city of Lakewood and also cares about the residents in the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Law Director
Yeah, first of all, this is not a noticed item, so I wouldn't expect the council to take up a great deliberation on this, but one word of caution, there are 2 lawsuits pending right now in 2 separate courts. The lawsuits generally are in the nature of residents who are not board members, who are ostensibly unit owners, suing the condominium association and their board members and probably management over various issues that probably touch on many of the things Ms. McKenna brought to your attention. The city does have an open correction notice right now with respect to the heating of certain units in the building and the overall replacement of an HVAC system, and has been working with the condominium association to oversee that work and make sure that it gets done in a timely way. I would just encourage you not to become a third fact finder in this case when we've got 2 courts now, one in Common Police Court, one downstairs in Lakewood Municipal Court, 2 judges looking at this very same situation. I'm not entirely certain that City Council is the appropriate forum for this.
Thank you, Law Director Butler. Chief Gilman.
Mr. Chair, the emergency generator has been repaired. It was tested at a load, and that test was witnessed by the fire department. That happened in January. Fire department had 4 violations, 3 of the 4 have been corrected, the 4th one is more time consuming and work to complete that one is underway. So from the fire department side, we've seen progress on making the required repairs.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of council? Councilman O'Malley.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Pam. You and I have talked almost weekly for the last 3 months, and I can certainly understand your frustration. A lot of the issues that you brought up tonight I've passed on to our housing and building department and to the law department, and again, I just know how frustrating that must be. And I've been by Marine Towers East, and we've talked about this, and just want to again say that I'd be glad to, I'm still available to talk about this as the process goes on, and you know, happy to serve as an advocate as well. But I guess the law director mentioned, I know that this situation is pending in a couple of different courts now, but again, just want to again reiterate how open I am to meeting with you and talking with you continually going forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you again to Ms. McKenna for her comments. Our next speaker tonight is also signed up on the Marine Towers issue. That's Sam Grabowski. And apologies for any mispronunciations, as always.
Yes, my name is Sam Grabowski, and I also live at 12520 Edgewater Drive. I am in one of the units that has not had heat for going on 2 years now. And I do have a child that resides in this, in my home with me. Nothing is being done. A space heater was provided, but it was said by the inspector that it was an unsafe heater to have in the unit, so we do not use it. I only have heat in my bedrooms, which is where we have to reside and live, because the rest of my unit does not have heat. So I think what this gentleman said over there is absolutely wrong. We have not had a working generator for years. It's a crapshoot. It works when it wants to work. So anything that he said is bogus. We've also went to the mayor.
I'm sorry. Please refrain from directly attacking.
I'm not attacking. I'm just saying what he said is wrong. That's what I'm saying. We've also gone to the mayor and asked for help on this, and we're told that we would try to get some help on this. Nothing's been done. We're paying hefty fees, like Ms. McKenna says, and we're getting nothing for what we're paying for, but harassments and assessments. This is unconstitutional and unfair to the people that live in this building, because this is going to have major foreclosures, and it's going to affect a lot of the elderly that are in the building. They're going to be out on the street. So all we're saying is do something, help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is true that they were provided electric heaters. The electric heaters were not put in correctly. They were being run off of a circuit. Per the manufacturer's installation instructions, they needed to have a dedicated circuit. 18 of the 27 units that had those have had that dedicated circuit put in. There are 6 scheduled for last week, and we have a prosecutor's hearing scheduled on the building for April 14th. But every time we've been down there for the generator, it did fail. They were cited for it. It was repaired. It did a load test, which was documentation for us that it would work under load and provide electricity to the items that are required by code to be powered by a generator.
Thank you. Our next person signed up to speak tonight is Lynette Edie, I believe it is.
Hi, my name is Lynette Edie. I live at Lakeshore Towers, which is managed and owned by Shaw Management, SHOWE, and I am the chairperson of the residential committee. And we have been operating about a year. We have some major issues going on there. We are a HUD building, and it's a mixed community, which is an issue. Because I live in market rate, and I'm paying $1,200. They went up 20% on my rent. And I decided that I needed to step up and help people that could not really help themselves, because a lot of the people there come from homelessness and they're afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid, I just need some guidance. And if this is the wrong format, let me know, give me some guidance, where to go for help. I'm not gonna take a lot of time because we have some people here that are hurting, and I'm hurting for them. And I'm not gonna take a lot of time. I need help. We need help. They are charging between $500 and $1,000 to people who are not making any money. And I'm not gonna take up any time because I'm gonna have the other ladies come up and tell you how it feels to live with bed bugs. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about bed bugs today. And they keep saying that we don't have bed bugs there. I have film. I made a little tape because my background is real estate, and I was on media for 15 years. So I'm gonna go forward. I would like your help. We need help. And they are not doing the people there correctly. And a lot of people are afraid they're making them sign forms to say, you brought the bed bugs. And in their other properties, they are actually exterminating the whole property, not just 1 or 2 like they're doing now. So we need help, and I am a fighter. I just need to know who to fight, how to fight. Give me the tools, and I will do it.
Next, yes, Councilman Litchfield.
Ms. Edie,
Yes.
not knowing the context of the situation, I may, seek to do some of my own homework as to what the city's done to date, but I'd also welcome an opportunity to speak with you afterwards about your issues and see what we can do to help.
What I would like is, we have identified the problem, and your ordinance 1306.34 does not give us enough ammunition to fight them, because they keep saying that if it's more than one person with them, they can charge that person. But what they're doing is they're not telling the truth. We have plenty of bed bugs. I have pictures of them crawling across the wall. So what we need from you is a change in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. As Councilman Litton said, I think a number of council members would potentially be available either immediately after this meeting or certainly in the near future to discuss that in more depth. Linda Dahl is our next speaker.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address. You'll excuse me if I'm a little tired. I didn't get any sleep last night because I am required to get my apartment ready for treatment, which means that I have to take absolutely everything I own and put it in plastic bags.
We can't hear you very well.
I might smell a little bit because I'm required to put all my belongings in plastic bags in my bathtub, which is filled from the top all the way up to the ceiling. I also haven't eaten because my food is in my refrigerator and I can only put bags in the kitchen because the last time they came to treat, the first time I prepared the apartment, they didn't say anything about it except not to put anything on the furniture. The next time I prepared it exactly the same way and they refused to treat. So all the work I did was for nothing. We get the thing put off. The life cycle of the bed bug is such that you need to be treating every 2 weeks. So if you miss treatment and it goes 4 weeks, it's basically like starting over from scratch. I have here the notice that was put on my door today. It tells me how I will prepare the unit for the next time around. They want me to live with all my belongings in plastic bags for 2 weeks, not being able to use my shower for 2 weeks. I don't even know about food. I'll have to see what I can do about that. For this glorious opportunity, I am being charged $602. I worked a job. After 2 merit raises, I was making $8.50 an hour. $602 is probably going to drive me back into homelessness, with the added proviso that I will lose absolutely everything I own. I'm going to be available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Bass or Bass?
My name is Leslie Bass. I live at 12506 Edgewater Drive. As most of you know, that's Edgewater Tower. Lakeshore Towers. And following the 2 previous speakers, I'm speaking to the issue of bed bugs. And our experience at Lakeshore Towers has been, this is just the tip of the iceberg. As our tenants group has been trying to make sure over the last year we've been dealing with our tenants there, the secrecy has been fierce because they've been afraid to cause any trouble because they're afraid they would risk their lease. Whenever the bed bugs would occur, they would have to go to the office and they would present with a paper that would already have printed on it that they were liable to pay for the cost because they're being blamed for not reporting the situation in a timely fashion. We've seen the paperwork. Ms. Edie has some videos of some people willing to share their story. It's taken this long just to get them to trust us, to come and say what's really happening. The ordinance has to be changed. The bed bugs may not carry disease, but there's definitely stress, mental stress, that when your house turned upside down and you're a senior citizen and you're disabled, and for PTSD, because you're a veteran, these things, when they linger over weeks, they carry a burden. And on top of that, these are things that anybody could suffer who got bed bugs because they don't look for dirt, they look for people who are breathing, which means any one of us here. And multifamily units have a double issue because we can't always control what our neighbors are doing. How can you prove that somebody should pay for the extermination fees and have them sign a form? And you do it one by one so the citizens there, like was mentioned, are homeless. They're protected classes. We're disabled. We have mentally ill. We have elderly. And it is just because there is no law to stop this particular owner from handling it this way. Now, we have evidence it's handled better. As Ms. Easy also referred to, this same owner handles their other bed bug issues differently at their other properties. We've got to close the gap in the ordinance so they can't arbitrarily charge us and transfer this burden to the people. It is just something that has been so hard to put together because they need to trust us. And if we are willing to work with you and tell you firsthand what's going on at our receiving end, so that when you do approach this issue, it is also to keep in mind what the people have to live with and not just what the owners want to charge. And let's look at the better avenue, that some owners have not gone that low route. They have also done better. They have let themselves do a whole building regular routine of treating this pernicious pest. It's not a spider or an ant. It has a whole totally different life cycle. It goes after your breath. It follows what you breathe, not dirt. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. It can be carried easily. There's no way to really prove how it got into your unit. And you might be forced to pay for the neighboring units if they say your unit caused the trouble. So these people have no extra money. And it's not just dealing with the bugs, it's dealing with the pressure. If you're having your house tore up over weeks, and then having to start over if a treatment is missed, and then having to sign this form out of fear because they're taking you one by one in the office and making you sign this form that automatically has printed on it that you didn't report in time, even if these people did do their due diligence. So we need your help, and I know you may not at first see how you can help us because the policy may not seem to be in your venue, but tell us what to do. We're in contact with Mr. O'Malley, he's our council person, and we are willing to share any piece of our story that you need. But we want to make sure that the people here at Lakeshore Towers are represented, and hopefully we can provide the base to have a citywide policy that everyone can live with. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Gelsomino.
I'm so grateful for our Lakeshore friends for being here because bed bugs has become a more complex and growing issue in the past 2 years that I've held this position. Many of you are already aware that the City of Lakewood has a bed bug work group. So this is front and center for human services. And we are very fortunate to have Lynette on that committee. It is complicated because there are no laws, there is no enforcement around bed bug, and it is because they are considered a nuisance. They do not carry communicable disease. There isn't any sort of support through our county Department of Health, which is often where you think you would be able to get the support. So the challenges for enforcement are very difficult for citation around this issue. Our work group is committed to working in kind of a four-part system. We have established a referral program, and our partners are Lakewood Alive. And Allison Urbanik and Mark McNamara are here tonight if you have any other questions to understand our relationship with them. It is a formal relationship between the city and Lakewood Alive that I can go into more detail later. Our second is prevention and education, and because one of the things about bed bugs is we have got to get in front of this. And a lot of that is education about from picking up furniture from outside, when you're in a movie theater, to be thoughtful and careful about where you're putting bags or coats. And it's true, we all need to be paying attention to this. This is a phenomenon that came to Ohio, starting in Cincinnati, and in the past few years has moved from Cincinnati to Columbus to Cleveland. And this is a very serious issue. Our last two issues are about policies and protocols within our work environments, and then also state and local advocacy, which takes us exactly to where the women who spoke from Lakeshore are referring. We do have work to do, and we are looking into other city ordinances to try to be able to find possible ideas that might work for our city too. So I just wanted you to have a quick update. Some of you have heard this before, but I wanted you to hear that also. So, and I'll be here for a while if you have any questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to speak to this too. Thank you, all of you from Lakeshore Towers, for coming and sharing your story. It's important that we hear this. I have been working with Director Gelsomino, who has been so determined on getting the word out and getting us educated. I've attended several of the bedbug task force meetings, and there was a senior collaborative just last week regarding this issue. It is something we have to be aware of, and we have to make plans on being proactive, which is exactly what Director Gelsomino is talking about. And Lakewood Alive has been very active in educating their team and educating the residents of Lakewood who they deal with. But it is a daunting task, one that will take a lot of energy and effort to find some resolution, but it's something that, every one of us may be dealing with at some point in our perhaps very near future. So I think that we as a community need to get a handle on this and make some decisions as to what we can do, and if there's legislation that can be drafted that can help ensure the citizens of Lakewood having safe housing. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, or Mr. President. I'd like to thank the citizens for coming and sharing with us some powerful testimony. So I'm convinced of a number of things. First, I think the city, even if we're not the only government on this beat, because certainly a HUD building has a federal component to it, and the county health department has a responsibility, in my view. But we ought to see if we can find the resources nobody ought to go homeless if they're offered a bill to either have a pest-free pest-free living environment or not be able to afford their rent or their groceries. The multi-unit challenge is clearly an enormous one, because as I've studied up on this, your electric outlets are a portal for any pass to go from unit to unit to unit. So I think the city does has an interest, and frankly, the Marine Shore Towers, folks, I'm glad that you're also coming and sharing with us your experience. We don't necessarily have a direct ownership interest in a condo building, but we do have a community and an economic interest in having our residential properties be successful and be nuisance free. And if there is a deficiency in the law to declare bed bugs a nuisance, or excuse me, a public health threat versus a nuisance, I think we've got the testimony today. I mean, this is a mental health stressor. It is a family budget stressor. It's a serious one, and it's a hugely disruptive life event if you're trying to get kids to and from school on a regular study schedule, and you have to turn your whole household upside down. If the law doesn't consider that to be a health threat, maybe the problem's with the law. We don't control the county code or the state code or the federal code, but we perhaps have options in our local code. So I certainly need to do more homework and get caught up with Director Gelsomino's good work and Councilwoman Marks' work, but you know, I'm convinced that we ought to really double and triple down and figure out a way to have effective and equitable and fair solutions, especially in these multi-unit buildings. There is appropriate discretion by the property manager to manage their own property, but it can't be in such a variance that people are having unaffordable bills imposed, or there's fear and anxiety to the degree that we're hearing about. And I imagine that everybody agrees on that. And just count me on board for doing more here. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Mayor.
Just to perhaps sum it up, first of all, this is serious, and we recognized it really probably last year, about 6 or 8 months ago, that this was not unique to any one building, and that we were particularly vulnerable with our multi-tenant buildings, and we have a lot of them. So we formed this task force, and we provided additional funds to solicit the expertise of Lakewood Alive. And I think Mark McNamara is here. Mark, did I see you? Yes. Mark is here, and perhaps Allison as well. They are able to provide significant grassroots focus on at the apartment street level, which is very important to us. Director Gelsomino indicated that this is a complex issue. Oftentimes there are many variables at play, and to solve many of these problems requires a multifaceted approach. So we've got this group that started. They're new. We've added strength to them. We've added financial resources. We've built a stronger team. Our fear is that we're still way behind the curve. And our sense is that if we continue to play defense, we will never be where we need to be as a community. So what I would suggest we do tonight is let this task force do its work for a near term here. Let them learn what they need to learn. Ask their advice on how we can, in fact, gain headway and get on offense where we need to be. And I'm certain we're going to have to put more resources. What those resources are and how we deploy them remains unclear to me. I suspect it would be to you. But we need to be very thoughtful. We need to be very effective here. But we need to take it at a high priority, and I assure you that we are. Director Gelsomino is the point of this government on this subject. She's working with a variety of people. So I would say the next month or two, we ought to convene a discussion. You ought to get updated, particularly from the task force members directly, to help you understand how we can make headway.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else, final comments or thoughts on this topic? Hearing none. Tom Monahan is our next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Tom Monahan. I live at 1487 Waterbury Road. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this master agreement that I'm running into people on the street, and they're talking to me about it, and I'm trying to educate them on it. And I heard a few comments tonight, and I'd just like to flesh out some of the ideas that I have. You know my feelings on it. It is a despicable document. It's one-sided. It favors the clinic. It shouts to me that there was no serious negotiations on the part of you folks in this room. You can sit there and try to defend it, but I've negotiated enough contracts and executed enough contracts to know that you had all the four aces in your hands and you just blew it. And you can sit there, Mayor, and say we got $50 million and it's wonderful. We really needed that hospital. And you really let a lot of people down. Sat here in just April, I think it was April, talking about the hens and the hen houses and things like that, which are great. But I think she mentioned that they've been working at this for 4 years with you folks on this. And the other day in court, I think Mr. Butler pleaded with the judge to end all the misery and the suffering because he complained the city's been arguing about the hospital for 11 months. So you put the hens for 4 years and you put the lives in this community up for 11 months? I think, I mean, that just tells the whole story to me that what's going on. And Mr. Bullock, any day that you want to negotiate a contract and argue with me, I'd be willing to do it for nothing. Because I mean, I breathed and lived that for 35 years. And it's just, it really does not speak well of your ability to negotiate anything on behalf of the city. Really disappointed. Okay? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bonnie Rubin.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Monahan, I appreciate you sharing your opinion. The assertion that you have done better with your negotiating skill, I can't dispute because it's an assertion and an opinion on your part. I do know, though, that you had a very well-respected law firm in representing the city, people with a lot of experience. You had a lot of experienced leaders representing the community. I think that you're mistaking the facts and the reality of the market position of Lakewood Hospital and the fact that there are and have been no alternative inpatient partners of the category with which you consistently advocated that were available. So I think you're simply mistaken. And I'll just remind you of the facts over and over and over again. I know that we've been through this now. You've been consistent in your position for at least 14 months, but you've been mistaken for at least 14 months. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bonnie Rubin.
What about my first right amendment? My first amendment right. I will tell you that
The next speaker is Bonnie Rubin.
I'll be here every meeting until I die.
Okay, the next speaker is Pam Watula.
My name is Vonnie Rubin. I live at 14401 Detroit Avenue. I call myself an East Side transplant. I was kind of dismayed ever since I found out about Euclid General Hospital. Probably history repeating itself, and they'll be soon gone if it works out the way Cleveland Clinic wants it to. And I am just picturing, since Hillcrest Hospital is the main hospital on the east side, minus, of course, Cleveland's Clinic. It is also, in case those of you who may never traveled over to the east side, one of the busiest intersections in on the east side. I'm talking about where Hillcrest Hospital is located. So I am feeling very sympathetic for anyone who lives out in Lakewood and has to drive out there. And I do hope history doesn't repeat itself, and I'm also hoping that maybe we can rewrite history and do some more negotiating on the contract, which doesn't seem to me like there was much negotiation or that it was ethical, because I just can't understand why having a non-compete clause, and I don't care how many times we've gone over this, it does not make any sense to me. Also, when I first was learning about the possibility of Lakewood Hospital closing, it was, quote, just a rumor. And then suddenly it went from being just a rumor, because I wasn't reading continually about it, to being a done deal. And I was asking, well, how is done spelled? Is it D-O-N-E or D-U-N? Which is, maybe all of you don't know this, but I did work in credit, and done was a term we used in credit when people didn't make their payments. Well, Lakewood Hospital should be done in Cleveland Clinic, if you ask me, but they're dunning us. I mean, they have such a super agreement with us. That again, I don't understand either. It's almost like they're payday loan collecting from us. And anyway, I'm sorry if I sound angry. Listening to people who've been treated very unethically by their landlords has brought back bad memories to me. And I really feel for them, and I hope you can do something about them as well as Lakewood Hospital. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. I would point out that as far as a payday loan collector goes, the next time that I get a check from a payday loan collector to me for $50 million, I will be sure to make a note of that. But in any case, our next speaker is Pam Watula.
Pam Watula, 11813 Clifton Boulevard. That $50 million is the LHA funds that we already had. I have three things to say. Number one, I want to try to go quickly. I want to thank you. Election day this year was a little bit different than November. City Hall parking was adjusted. It went from 38 spaces for registered voters, of which 33 were filled all day in November, and 5 were available, to 14 available spots, 2 of which were filled all day of that. So it was a little bit better. I wanted 7:20 to vote myself. Went back at 3:30. However, it still was an issue at lunchtime. I don't know what happened at dinner time. There were not enough available parking spots, but it was considerably better. So if there is voting at City Hall in November, we anticipate a much higher percentage of voters, and I hope that we can do even better. So I want to thank you for the improvement that already happened. My next thing is travel west on Detroit, turn left or south on Warren Road. Stop at the first light or a little bit before the first light. There is a red light. You want to go into the INA building, parking. There's marks over here. If you have a red light, you cannot tell what the traffic has coming towards you. You don't know if they have a red light or if they have a green light. It's an area of potential disaster on almost a daily basis. I talked to the gentleman in the booth for the INA parking. Mayor, I spoke to you about this. I would like for you to talk to the traffic area. You need to stop those on both sides to let marks come through and then give both sides a green light. You really are dodging them. You just don't know sometimes if you have traffic coming towards you or not. It's very dangerous. The third thing I want to say is I'm really disappointed, even I didn't think of this one. There's another unintended consequence of this master agreement that has come out, and it's very important. Our police are spending time at Fairview and Avon and downtown and Lutheran, taking reports, filling out reports on EMS travels to those locations because they're not going to Lakewood's ER anymore. They're going out of the city, and that is wasting a lot of time of our policemen They are not in the city to patrol. So unless you're going to beef up that police department to accommodate for hour after hour of your officers on duty out of the city, filling out reports on EMS responses, you're going to have a big problem. Lastly, I want to say just a small thing. I have a gentleman friend. He's 89 years old. Dr. Chan is a Cleveland Clinic doctor. He's a very good doctor. I have him myself in the past. He's a cardiologist. Dr. Chan told my friend that in order to get his testing, he had to drive to Avon. And as an 89-year-old gentleman, he does still drive, but he's really concerned and he hasn't done it. So we have, he can't afford to take a taxi all the way out to Avon to have an echo or an EKG or whatever it was. It was one of those two that I can't remember. But the fact is that is way too far for our seniors that do have cars. And of course, there's not buses out there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Kevin Young.
I'm Kevin Young. I live at 1598 Elber Avenue. When we were kids, we always had lots of laughs going to the fun house. The beers were always the most fun. My buddy Billy's stomach would look huge in the mirror, and my buddy Steve's forehead would look all distorted. There'd be all kinds of space between his eyebrows and his hairline. Funny how it is today, without the mirrors in front of us, Billy's stomach is nice and big, and Steve has lots of space between his eyebrows and his hairline. Other things can create distortions in the things we see. I wear swim goggles when I swim laps at the YMCA here in town. They are great as long as I'm in the water, but when I need to see what time it is and I look at the clock, I have to take them off because it's all distorted. There's a small group of people in our community who wear what I call build goggles. With them on, they can see that there are places where they can build stuff. This is the same group of people that created the West End mess. With those goggles on, they missed the important stuff, particularly when it came to the West End. Perfectly fine homes, like the ones that are still standing there, all of a sudden look blighted. There are rumors floating around that these goggles are seeing an end to nature's bin. I guess with these goggles on, a fine food market looks like new townhomes, just like the ones you might see going up on the brownfields of Gordon Square. The Bill goggles miss that the old housing stock in our community is really, really great with its real 2x4 solid plaster walls and far more desirable than anything that can be built today. The Bill goggles saw our city's largest employer as something that should be swept away in favor of something that cannot possibly match what a full-service hospital can provide economically. The Bill goggles think that the deal for the hospital is great, when in fact it is a horrible deal. The Bill goggles overlook the fact that a profitable hospital was made to look like it was losing money, when in fact that was not the case. Have any of you seen what's going on Cam's Corner lately? The area is booming thanks to the overly busy Fairview Hospital. It concerns me that the Bill goggles miss that with our largest employer gone, we're going to see a lot of empty storefronts and a lot of things leaving this city. For those of us without the Bill goggles on, we can see what the real results are of the distorted view that the Bill goggles bring. We know that the shiny new buildings that they have in mind will leave, as I said, a lot of empty storefronts. Without the Bill goggles on, we continue to wonder who the few beneficiaries are of this build movement. The losers are the good people of this community who want to know why they were not given a choice of who their health care provider would be. The people who were not given a say in this enormous change that is being thrust upon them. And the losers are the people who, as a result of these big changes, could very well see a reduction in their real estate prices. Those darn Bill goggles with their distorted view have caused a lot of problems. I encourage anyone who's wearing them to take them off. so that they can see the real disaster that is at our doorstep as this hospital is closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Tara Pepper. Ms. Pepper? No? Okay. Judy Gillespie.
Judy Gillespie, 23003 Chandler's Lane, Olmsted Falls, former 46-year resident of Lakewood. I'm going to go a little off my own topic, and in reference to the bed bug issue, I was here at a meeting in Lakewood, heard firsthand from an authoritative figure that stated that there's a family somewhere in Lakewood that has such a bad bed bug situation in the rented place they live that when the children go to the high school, they take their clothes off in the office. They're given clothes to put on so they can go to school in their classrooms, and then at the end of the school day, they come and they put their regular clothes that they came in and they go back home. That is not solving any problems.
Well, but that's why we have the task.
Well, but what I'm saying is that I wanted it said here so the people behind me know that you know what's going on, you know what's happening, and that to me is a real sad situation. This is a very, very deplorable situation. And yet for me to have heard that before I knew about theirs is heart-wrenching to me. I'd like to comment on the mayor's written information that he read off about dollar figures. But you know what? The Cleveland Clinic can promise you when they're going to pay things, but you know what? Until they pay you, you don't have the money. And if they bailed out on you on a 30-year contract and didn't pay their $10 million to you, what makes you think they're going to pay you what they're promising in writing after so many years? So don't hold your breath, because you might not live to survive them ever bailing out on suspending their existing master agreement. My comments today are to Scott Gilman. And I had
I'm sorry, ma'am. Really, truly, you need to direct your comments at the chair.
Well, I'm responding to what I asked 2 weeks ago for him to supply me information. I'm following up, and I told him 2 weeks ago that I wanted the information, and I gave him the dates and everything, and then he took my time, and then he wrote them down, and so he knew. And I sent him an email to request it, and I tried to get an email, but he couldn't return my phone call for 4 days because of the phone system. But we finally talked on the phone. He gave me his email. I had written out 14 questions. Now, the reason that I approached him on asking him questions about the answers that I was looking for was because he is such an authority on the ambulances and the emergency room, because him and the lady there are buds, and so he knows all this information. What I've realized is he's an opinionated man. He doesn't necessarily have the knowledge base. He's part of the fire department, but what I recognized by his answer to my 14 questions was that every one of my 14 questions, except 2 of them, were all answered with the fact that he stated, starting out on the very first question, I was asking the daily and total number of ER visitors needs attempted, admitted, or transferred to Lakewood Hospital between the 22nd, which was the day after the master agreement, and the 6th, the day before the council meeting of the 7th. He said, not a record that is kept by LFD. All of my questions were all answered, not a record that is kept by LFD. So I am saying that I wasted my time, I wasted my effort, my desire to find out information. I even wasted my time on the phone talking to him about what I was concerned about. And gosh knows he had an opinion about what I was talking about. He had an opinion about the fact that I talked about people sitting in the emergency room waiting 4 or 5 hours to be transferred and blah, blah, to be transferred and no, deferred. I called them deferred, and he corrected me on that. They weren't deferred. But he wasted my time. He's not the man to talk to. Now I have to start all over again and find out who I need to direct my 14 questions to find out in a 3.5-month period how well things are not working. But I want you to know that he has misrepresented himself, and it was a waste of my time to try to get an answer from him. And I think that's as unfortunate as when I started to read the deposition of Mayor Summers and notice what a poor memory this man is unfortunately expressing in his deposition on how many, I only looked through 9 pages so far, but we have, I can't recall, I'm not specifically, I don't specifically recall, well, geez, I think it was, or I don't recall
Ms.
who it
Gillespie, I'm
was.
sorry, we're going to have to leave it there for tonight. That's the end of the 5 minutes.
Well, what
The next speaker is Ed Graham.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just
Councilman Bullock.
briefly, folks, on page 1 of every council docket, it says the same rules that have always been there for addressing council, and so the speakers must be courteous in their language and avoid personalities. It's also addressing council. The reason for these rules isn't just to have rules and be sticklers. They are ways for us to all be courteous and attempt to keep the frustration and the passion appropriate. Chief Gilman is the head of the fire department. I have every confidence in the information that he provides. Ms. Gillespie, if you need help tracking down answers, feel free to enlist my help. I'll be happy to facilitate and intermediary.
Can I send the email to you?
Please do, and I'll be happy to try to give assistance. Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Chief Gilman.
I have no way of knowing how many patients go through the emergency room at Lakewood. That's a record kept by the Cleveland Clinic. I can't answer that question. That is not a record that is kept by the Lakewood Fire Department. We drop the patient, if we transport a patient there, I can tell you how many we transported there. We don't keep a record of how many are transferred out. The fire department does not do any transfers out. So the questions that were asked were not questions that pertained to the Lakewood Fire Department. They pertained to the Lakewood ER, for which the Lakewood Fire Department does not maintain statistics.
Thanks for clearing that up.
But he answers questions all the time about the
Ed Graham.
Edward Graham, 1286 Chase still. Mayor was talking about us getting all this money. I took a look at the agreement that he signed. I was trying to figure out who's getting what. And I sort of looked at what did the clinic get out of this? Well, it got valuable real estate on the west side of Bell Avenue. How much is that worth? Most people who would be selling property like that would get an appraisal on it. So you would have some pretty reliable information. I haven't seen that we ever got an appraisal on it.
Independent appraisal.
And there's $2.5 million of wind-down money that the clinic got for parking structure and termination of the definitive agreement, which would be worth at least $10 million since they had that much rent owed for another 10 years. They got a restrictive covenant placed on our valuable property, the Lakewood Hospital building, which clearly depreciates its value since the highest and best use would be as a hospital. They got the Columbia Road property for $8.2 million. Since the hospital had another bidder for more than $8.2 million, the city got ripped off on that. You got $24.4 million to a new foundation which would be controlled by the clinic. That's not an asset of the city, that's an asset of the going to the clinic. Clinic lost nothing in this matter. The Hospital Association got nothing out of it. It had $50 million, which should be the property of the city, but it winds up with nothing. What did the city get? Well, let's see, 6.2 provides $7 million of Lakewood Hospital Association money for demolition. That money should be going to the city in any event. That's not getting any money. That's our money. That's taking it from one pocket and putting it in another. 8.2 million for the Columbia property. Well, we're losing the property. That's just converting from real estate to money. We're not getting anything out of that. The $8.2 million. In fact, we're losing since we could have got more money than $8.2 million, up to $2,887,500 rent for the Lakewood Hospital Association, which already had an obligation of paying $10 million, so we're really not gaining anything by that. We wind up with the Curtis Block building and residential property, again, title held by the Lakewood Hospital Association. According to prior documents, all that should revert to the city. So the city really got nothing out of it. When I say they got zipped, that's exactly what they got, nothing. The city wound up losing millions of dollars of valuable property, and it has a restriction on the use of the hospital. Significant loss to the city. So to try and say we're getting money out of this is really false, totally false. The money is all coming from assets that the city is entitled to. We got nothing out of this deal. I will continue to say that because it's the truth. Thank you.
Thanks. Just briefly to correct a couple misstatements in that truth. To begin with, there were a number, and I won't go line by line, but there were a number of assets listed that are not city assets, they're LHA's assets. And so it is important as we continue to deliberate on this that we keep that distinction in mind, that just because an asset is kept by LHA does not mean that there is an unassailable or any right to that asset from the city of Lakewood's perspective. So that's important to keep in mind. The other thing that I would note, as you began your remarks, you mentioned that the preferred practice for you would be to have an appraiser give an appraisal of the value of the west side of Bell property, and that is what's being done. So it's done. It's done already. So on that note, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thanks very much.